Hello and welcome to another edition of Breakfast Club, where David and I are joined by a guest or two to look over our team selection ahead of the game week deadline. With lunchtime kickoff today, we also revealed the lineups and hope for once there are some surprises. There haven't been any yet. Today, David and I are joined by Brandon and Josh from Always Cheating podcast. Brandon
Morning.
and Josh, welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
Delighted
Good morning.
to be here. As I mentioned before, the sun will be coming up as we record this podcast.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's 6:18 in the morning here in New York, so we're early
my-
risers.
This is proper Breakfast Club. Usually
right.
for me and David, it's sort of kind of almost getting towards lunchtime club. But yeah, this is proper Breakfast Club.
People were saying it should be called Brunch Club.
Brunch club. I think Brunch Club would be more apt. Yes,
That would go over well in Brooklyn, I'll tell you that.
Just wanted to point out that on the live stream, some idiot called me has put Game Week 10 on there. It is in fact Game Week 9 that we're looking forward to. I will address that after we have streamed. So
We're so forward thinking.
I
We're
know,
already
so
thinking
forward
about next
thinking.
week.
I make mistakes, but I will correct them afterwards. So I think what we're going to do first is we're going to have a look at Josh's team, because I think David may want to chip in with something to say about your new recruit.
All right.
So Josh, let's have a look at your team and tell us what changes you've made.
Right. So I guess two things of note, I think, with my team this week. I have switched. It was an interesting situation. I'm 2 weeks off a wild card, and I had two transfers in hand. And I couldn't really decide what to do. Honestly, if I didn't have two transfers, I probably would have just held my transfer. But as it is, I felt like it was like a rare opportunity to make a champagne transfer, and not feel sort of guilty about it. So I moved Trippier to Mendy. And I'm going with a 4 at the back rotation. The other thing that's interesting here is that I'm going with 4 at the back, and then I'm benching Madison, who is a player that I was like right on the fence of being benchable, as sort of a third midfielder. But I think it made the most sense. I mean, the clean sheet odds indicate that Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Wolves are the 4 teams most likely to keep a clean sheet this weekend. So I thought it was the rare chance to do a 4 at the back and bench a pretty decent midfielder.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got some good news for you there as well about getting Mendy in as well, and sticking with that 4 at the back as well, because I had a look at goal attempts in the box conceded. This is a good stat, because this is the stat you don't want to be big. What you want is a really good stat of goals conceded outside of the box. You want lots of really awful long-range efforts that are easily dealt with. And yeah, the top teams is Man City with only 29, and that's by far the best. So getting a Man City player, especially against Burnley, is really good, I think.
Excellent.
And playing Wolves as well, and then Liverpool are the other two. And guess what, Chelsea? 1, 2, 3, 4. You had nailed the 4 best teams in terms of not giving up chances. But David, we had some team news yesterday. We couldn't quite squeeze in around Man City, and you're about to wreak havoc on this decision.
Wow.
Or maybe not.
Well, I don't want to be too mean. I thought about Mendy too, but when I saw that Delph is now back in contention, I kind of got a bit itchy, and I thought, I don't know. I mean, I think he'll still start. I think it's Delph and Mendy. There's no comparison, right? But I mean, are you worried about Delph?
Well, a little. I mean, you can't transfer in a Man City player without being a little worried about the rotation, because I like the rest of my team. I mean, I know we're talking about 1 week here, but because I like my team, including the bench, I feel like it's okay. Like I can handle a little Man City rotation and feel like I've got players who are coming in who can sort of spot me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Madison will help you there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Madison, and even like in upcoming weeks. I mean, the nice thing about Matt Doherty, it's very hard for me to say that as an American. I cannot say Doherty correctly.
You should hear some of the rubbish we come out with when it comes to pronouncing names. So
the thing that's nice about him is that even if he comes in off the bench, I feel like there's always a little bit of assist and I guess goal threat now from him too. I mean, he had 4 goals in the championship last year, I think. So, I feel like he allows me to have a player like Mendy, because even if he comes in off the bench, I feel like I could pick up some points. And and they've even done, I think they conceded 1 away to at Man United, and then only conceded 1 at home to City. So I feel like they're holding their own against pretty good competition.
Oh yeah, I love the Wolves defense. I've got Doherty and that's how you say it, by the way, and Patricio. So yeah. So I love Wolves. Yeah, don't get me started on Wolves. You won't be able to stop me.
Okay. Now I've got some more good news for you, Josh. I'm all over this good news stuff, and I'm going to reel out my goals imminent table. Which is very nice. There's a nice guy on Twitter who reviews all the podcasts, and he rather kindly, and I paid him obviously to say this, but he thinks that the goals imminent table should get its own podcast. So I don't know quite there yet.
Yeah, let's do that.
We'll give it a mention now. But Jimenez as well, I can see there, and he is on my goals imminent table. So he is officially, according to the stats, due a goal. So that's good there. The other thing I just wanted to pick
that guy.
Before we get to Brandon's team, just one last thing I wanted to pick up on Maddison, first sub as well, and when we get to my team, I've done that as well. I'm nervous basically because there's been 11 goals in the last 2 games between Arsenal and Leicester, and I just think he's going to be full of assists that game. And I've got no coverage on Monday as well. Does that bother you not having any particular coverage on a particular game day?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't. It does bother me. But I just couldn't. I could not bench Trent Alexander-Arnold or Doherty or it didn't make any sense. Any of the other moves I might have made. I guess Jimenez would have been the player I might have benched, and home to Watford, it just didn't make sense. So but my feeling is that I feel like there's always one surprise benching or a player who doesn't make the 18 coming out of the international break. This happened with Mendy 4 weeks ago, so I feel like there's at least a chance that one of my starting 11 just won't make the team. And so I feel like there's at least I'll give a 30% odds that I'll end up with Maddison on Monday anyway. But yeah, I don't like it either. It's the same, I don't like to not have a player on Monday. I don't like to captain a player for the first fixture, all that superstitious stuff, but it's still true. I feel that way.
Okay, well, I think what we'll do now is we'll turn to Brandon's team now. So obviously you two, I presume you have some kind of competitive edge to them. Now you're currently 14,000th, Josh, and Brandon not far behind at 21,000. So let's have a look at your team then. What changes you made?
Yeah, well, I was trying to avoid going on tilt, to use a poker reference, because my last 2 transfers haven't panned out for me after making a number of pretty good decisions in hindsight. So in going into game week 7, I brought in Ben Mee ahead of their Cardiff City Huddersfield doubleheader, and that is a lesson learned in terms of short-term transfers, particularly short-term.
I heard your podcast after that move, and I liked the comment. I think it was Josh or indeed yourself made that you kind of went for Benjamin Mendy, but kind of lost some letters along the way. You ended up with Ben Mee.
Yeah, just X'd out the MDY at the end, and I thought it would be basically the same player. I thought Ben Mee would be bombing down the wings through the beautiful process.
Oh man.
Didn't quite work out.
Back in the day, he played left back for Burnley and got absolutely rinsed when they were in the Premier League before by pretty much every winger going. That's why he plays centre back now.
Oh, wow, interesting.
So you've rectified that.
Yeah, I've finally rectified it. So of course, going into game week 7, the obvious transfer would have been Trippier or Doherty. Did I get that one right, David? Doherty.
To be honest, there's some debate. There's debate. You guys,
you're literally asking the wrong people here. It took me.
Don't ask us to say Arnautovic. That's the one we get killed.
What you mean, Arnautovic, right?
Yeah.
Arnautovic.
Yeah.
Arnautovic.
Just call him Arnie. That's fine.
So I finally rectified that mistake by bringing Doherty in 2 weeks late. So I'm a few transfers behind now in my defense. But this was the week for me to finally make a sensible long-term decision that wasn't Ben Mee. I brought in Arnie last week, and Josh and I were actually at the Brighton West Ham game week, so there was an extra incentive for me to bring in a West Ham or Brighton player.
And on the trade down, I was pleading with you to bring in Glenn Murray, and you couldn't do it. Murray was a bridge too far for you.
Yeah, of course. Then when Glenn Murray scores, Josh was kind enough not to point at me and say, "I told you so."
I don't believe he was kind about it.
he would have gotten too angry. I couldn't. It would have.
And
you
were amongst the West Ham fans as well. There, I understand.
We were, yeah. They were all pretty civilized, I have to say, and it was a lot of fun traveling with them.
Do you know what I mean? The last time I was at the Amex was actually against West Ham as well, and it's something that you pointed out quite rightly that the Brighton fans can be a little quiet, a little subdued, and the West Ham fans put the far more majority of Brighton fans to shame with their shouting and their taunts and their insults. So
away fans always do. Yeah, it's because the away fans are the hardcore ones, and the home fans are the families. That's how it always is.
Yeah, so you were in the right place there.
So yeah, I'm feeling good about my my last two transfers, Arnie and now Doherty, long-term transfers that'll probably accrue value. I know a lot of people are now starting to look at Arnie despite his knee issues, but West Ham after Spurs just have a bevy of great fixtures, and I'm hoping to see some goals there. So seeing a couple of yellow flags with Salah and Fraser in particular is worrying coming out of the international break. Who knows what's going to happen with Fraser, but as everyone will quickly point out, the last time Fraser was flagged coming out of the break, he produced 2 goals and an assist. So I'm hoping for good things for him there. Well, I will be starting Maddison, though, because I don't have much of a choice. My bench right now is Cathcart, Wan-Bissaka, and Phil Billing, also flagged. There was some temptation to start either Matty Ryan in goal or Cathcart just to not double up on Wolves, because it's hard for me to say what's going to happen between that Watford-Wolves match. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Watford were able to put one by them. And Cathcart has been looking decent, like Dunk Duffy levels of threat on corner kicks. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but
last season it was the greatest insult you could put, but this season it's good. It's good for Duffy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I like the look of this. It's good that you've come to the Doherty party, finally. Like, I remember Millennium New Year's Eve, I had to work. I was working for a local paper. I had to work that shift, so I didn't finish until midnight. And I went to a party afterwards, and it was quite good. And I had missed out on quite a lot, but it was still quite good. So this is like you. You've come to the party late. It's still okay. Still some smiles. Still some drinks to be had.
But there's still some songs left on the playlist. Let's go. Let's
go. I mean, it's starting to slow down a bit. You've missed, the full-on Bohemian Rhapsody conga around the living room, all of those things. You missed the highlights.
Yeah, there's some great memories that I will only have seen on a Facebook feed.
Now, I just wanted to ask David. There's 2 things I want to ask David. One is that I'm hoping that you've been making a live transfer.
I have. I've done it.
And also after that. What we'll do is if you just explain what you've done quickly, and then we'll put your team up, and then we'll go to the team sheets, and then we'll go back to you, David.
Well, there's been controversy this week. People think I'm boring.
I'm just going to say I'm putting up your team now, the picture of your previous team. So what have you done?
Oh yeah, that's my previous team. Yeah. Because my starting 11 is unchanged. I've captained Aguero. I think that's the only difference from last week. Yeah, people think I'm boring, so this week I've decided to prove them wrong by swapping Wayne Hennessy for Lucas Fabianski live on the show. There it is. And I'm not even starting him.
Brandon is reeling. I can see him in the screen. He's reeling.
I had to go on mute there for a second.
Yeah. You were screaming so loud in your head. Your brain was trying to get out.
I mean, just to quantify for people who are probably just like, what on earth? I don't want to get rid of any of my starting 11 players, and I can't really see. So Wan-Bissaka, I looked at maybe moving him on for Lucas Digne, but I kind of want to keep the money in the bank. I want to save that for maybe when I upgrade either one of Maddison or Fraser at some point. I don't want to get rid of Fraser because I think he'll play. Aguero, Mitrovic, Jimenez, that's not changing. I want to start Maddison because, as people have said, that Monday night game, obviously going to be stuff happening in there. Robertson, Alonso, Doherty, again, just none of these players do I want to not start. And in a couple of weeks' time, I don't want to double up on Wolves' defence when they play Spurs and Arsenal, and West Ham have some nice fixtures to plug the gap. So that's a long-term view of a transfer.
I mean,
highly exciting.
Some would say you've completely wasted it, but not I. No,
well, I got 2 free transfers, so I've only used 1, and I've got 2 next week.
It's the same situation. Yeah, and I have the Fabianski Patricio duo as well. I think that it's kind of the perfect duo for the next, at least 10 weeks
They
or
rotate
so.
very nicely, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, it is annoying because we spoke on the Scoutcast earlier this week, and I felt because I had Harry Kane, I just felt behind the curve, and then all you were, the likes of David, they're going, luxury transfers abound, and you can do this. You've got the time to do it. You've given yourself that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. My team was set up for this game week without needing to bring in the big hitter, so let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean the likes of me and Brandon, we've had to play catch up a little bit here, but
It's frustrating.
You and Josh have got luxury moves here. So David, have we had some team sheets in?
Yeah, we've had some team news. It does look as if we're going to be like, oh well, never mind. That's exactly what we expected. So yeah, the Chelsea team is Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I taught my dad to say that the other day, and he was like, wow.
It's very impressive.
Then we got Cesar Azpilicueta. Antonio Rudiger starts amid some doubts that he wouldn't. David Luiz, Marcos Alonso, so that's the back four. Jorginho, Kante, and Kovacic. So Kovacic comes through a little bit of a knock that picked up a few days ago, and then it's Willian instead of Pedro, Hazard, and Morata as the Chelsea team. Then the Man United team, which, to be fair, we never really know what we're going to get with this, but no one really cares because I think we've all jumped off it. It's De Gea in goal. Then we've got Shaw, Smalling, Lindelof, and Young as back four. It could be a back three. We never know with Mourinho. Matic, Pogba, and Mata, Rashford, Martial, and Lukaku. So actually, not too many surprises there.
Hey, so no Herrera.
That's right, no Herrera, which again doesn't really surprise me because the quotes that so a lot of news sources are saying Mourinho said he's going to play, but he didn't. He kind of said he might, and he's still got a bit of a knock, and he might help us. That doesn't make him available in my opinion.
Well, that's encouraging for Hazard owners because Matic seems like the only person in that lineup equipped to man mark, but he's slow in his older age. I don't think he can track Hazard the same way Herrera did last season. So
that's right.
Did any of you guys consider the Hazard captaincy? I definitely flirted with it for half a second, and
I would if I'd have known the team sheet. I would have considered it, but I did think because of the last time I remember they put Herrera was. Do you remember they played and Herrera basically like deposited himself within Hazard's socks and was just like walking behind him everywhere.
His shadow. Yeah,
and I just didn't. I couldn't face that. But yeah, that does look. You're right.
I had more worry about Salah. I had it on Salah before the injury, and obviously the injury and
likewise,
it's Aguero. Just that was an easy one. Yeah, I never really thought about Hazard to be honest. Which is in years gone by maybe I would have done because he did really well for me last week. But it's not about that. There's more promise for Man City this week.
Yeah,
still this old school idea of Mourinho, I think, as the super defensive manager. I mean, maybe he still wants to be that, but he doesn't have the personnel anymore. It's kind of.
But he has this way. Man United, even not even just with Mourinho, but under him in the last couple of years, they'll do really poorly, and then they'll just go and win a game that just no one expects them to. Yeah, all of a sudden, he's the special one again, definitely in his mind.
Right, like
the journalist. And then next week they lose 2-0 to, I don't know, Fulham or something stupid. That's just what they're like, isn't it?
It's like exactly what happened last year, right? They won the Man City derby, and then they lose at Brighton like the following week. So
yeah, something like that. Yeah. So they're so unpredictable. So I just wasn't going to touch a Chelsea player for captaincy anyway. I still think it was score. But...
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna mention my goals imminent table again, just because I can. And there he is at the top, Paul Pogba. So. Paul Pogba could be on for a goal or two today, and this does strike me as one of those games. It's basically going to be a Hazard or a Pogba game, whichever is free to roam and do their business. Because Pogba can turn it on the big stage. He's a World Cup winner, obviously, so he can. Okay, well let's have a look at my team then. So I have made a slightly more interesting move, but it's also quite boring.
It doesn't get more interesting than Fabianski. Come on.
No, the Fabianski move. That's good. It's long term.
You love the guy, Joe. You love him.
I do love Fab. Do you know what? All of this is just pure jealousy because I look at him and I think, God, I had Fabianski. I got rid of him for Joe Hart because. I don't know why. But you do
many Joes.
I can always get him. But I might get Hart and Fabianski. How about that? That will really. I could do that next week. Maybe that would really keep the
live
momentum
on the show, please.
going. Yeah, I'll do a live one. I've got rid of Kane. I got Aguero in. I do think there is a good chance Kane will score today. I think he's in a away game. I think Eriksen will be back. I think Dembele's back. I think there's going to be much more creativity behind him. There's going to be much less need for Kane to start dropping deep and becoming this kind of super number 10 that he has been for England and Spurs this season. So I think Aguero, I just looked at the players. I prefer having the next few matches Aguero plus 1.5 or so million to use elsewhere. I've suddenly got myself some flexibility for next week. My hands were tied this week, really. And yeah, I think Kane could punish me today, but I look at the fixtures coming up and I don't really want him at the moment. And I do want Aguero. I've checked it through the Fantasy Football Scout Rate My Team computer, and it's telling me that the Aguero move from Kane is a good one over the next few.
Okay. The computers agree.
The computer says yes, so this is a good thing. So
yeah. Take that, little brain.
And that 1.5. So this is the bit I'm interested, because I don't know about whether you lot do this as well. But one of the first things to do when the game updates is that I go in and I start looking at arranging my team for the next game week. I don't know why. I think part of my head of the pessimist in me think, oh, what if I'm in a terrible accident or something? Or I want it in place.
I do the same.
We call that on the Always Cheating podcast our bus team, and the bus team means if you, exactly as you're saying, Joe, if you get hit by a bus the next morning, and,
exactly.
no one's dying, but if you end up in a coma, at least you won't be embarrassed by the team that you put out the following.
That's the first thing you think about when you wake up, 6 months later. How did my Game Week 10 team do?
Yeah, exactly. Did Aguero score?
Yeah.
So I think that's what I do, and so I've got that, and I'll look at that team joyously when we finish broadcasting, and it will say I've got about 1.5 million in the bank, and I will look at that, and it will just give me lots of options. So it could give me the option of, say, Danny Ings to Arnautovic, which would be good. Yep. It could give me the option of perhaps downgrading Trippier. Even, and then giving myself like 3 million or so in the bank the following week. I don't know. I like options. I like to be flexible and a bit yogic with these things. But yeah, so I mean, anything else looking at this week? Any other? I mean, Josh and Brandon here. Have you got any things that you think are big surprises that are going to happen? Do you think the things that you're most worried about happening?
Well, I'm sort of interested in the Everton Palace game on Sunday. I mentioned this on Twitter yesterday, but I think Richarlison. I think somebody can have a big game there. The team is sort of a lot of injuries in it, and then apparently there's this flu bug going around the team as well. And someone said, well, doesn't that mean Hodgson's just going to park the bus? But I don't really know that he has the personnel to do that, even if he wanted to. I mean, Patrick Van Aanholt and Wan-Bissaka are not exactly the most defensive players, and Sakho can't do it alone, So I think that I don't know. I think we could see a lot of goals in that game. I mean, watch it be a 0-0 now, but but that's the one I'm kind of looking forward to. Just from I have Richarlison, so it's not an unbiased opinion here, but I think we could see some goals in that match.
No, I was going to see Brandon. You're like me. You don't have Richarlison. Are you worried?
Yeah, I am worried. I had him at the start of the season, and of course he was gold before his red card. And that was when I triggered my wild card. So at that point, I immediately moved on from Richarlison. And I have a bit of a anti-Everton thing going on in my head this season. And I just have long-term issues with Marco Silva for whatever reason. So I'm trying to not get Richarlison in my head. For me, it's all about Mitro this game week. And I am a Fulham supporter, so I have big concerns for Fulham generally, but if they're going to turn this early season around, they have to do something against Cardiff. And I watched, like all of us did, I'm sure, the second half of Serbia, Romania, and Mitro's form looked pretty decent.
We were all watching that,
yeah. Oh, yeah. We were wrapped with attention.
All of America.
So I would like, just from a fantasy perspective and a fan perspective, to see something from Mitro this game week. And to state the obvious, we've all hung on to Salah this game week. Let us be rewarded, please.
Oh, please. It's about time.
Now, you've mentioned two things there that I really like, because I'm going to reel it out again. Here's the goals imminent table. Who's on it?
Oh, here it is.
Mitrovic.
This is a dream come true, Joe.
Mitrovic,
I've been hearing about the
and
goals
Salah. This is
for
good.
years, and now here I am live.
We're going to have a table for when goals imminent mentions imminent table.
Yeah, this is it.
He's due a mention.
It's here, and it's telling us all really good things. These are all the things we want to hear, aren't they? So Mitrovic, I mean, to be honest, you don't need a table for that. He's a goal machine. He's just got an awful team behind him. But as soon as they can get some chances over to him, that's good. But I think Salah's got to be. He's got to be due a goal. I mean, Huddersfield, Cardiff. If he can't do it against those two, that could be it for me. Me and Salah.
That's last chance, isn't it?
Yeah. This could be his last match for me. If he plays 90 this week and plays 90 again in the Champions League, especially if Sterling doesn't play in the Champions League, I would definitely consider a Salah to Sterling move that would free up funds to go from Raul to Arnautovic. So I don't know. That's definitely. I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting. Like, how well does he have to play today for him to stay in my team? I mean, their fixtures upcoming are great, but there's got to be some rotation risk, right, with some of their difficult Champions League fixtures. So I don't know.
I think the thing I'm looking out for is not only just the eye test, but also the underlying stats. And his problem at the moment isn't that he's not shooting, isn't that he's not involved, isn't that he doesn't look like he wants to have a go. It's just that he's just not as accurate as many other
really
players.
Chances, isn't he?
As you mentioned with Sterling, and you mentioned it on the Scoutcast as well, Sterling's becoming so tempting now, and it really is Salah to Sterling. That's the move we kind of want to do, but we're a bit too scared to do it at the moment. But there are plenty that have gone off Salah. I think ahead of our Scoutcast, it was 150,000 that just got rid of him just over a week. So there's a lot of issues to look at this week, and a lot of eyes are going to be on Salah as well. Any other, just before we go, any other players or matches you got any thoughts on in particular?
Well, I guess the Brighton Newcastle match. I have nobody in that game, but Brighton have such a great run of fixtures coming up. I'm kind of curious if they can keep the momentum going. If they can, I mean, Newcastle obviously need to win desperately. But, people like Murray, who we're all kind of dismissing. And honestly, it's hard for me. I think I really haven't been even that tempted by a Brighton defender so far this season. I think they just kept their first clean sheet last week. So I don't know. I'm just interested in that match, just as like in terms of future prospects that I might, consider bringing into my squad.
I'm thinking about it too.
Sorry, David.
No, I was just going to say Newcastle as well.
Yeah, right. Newcastle as well. Yep.
I think I would have started Matt Ryan in goal if Brighton were playing at home at the Amex, but them away from home, it just scared me off that a bit, and I knew a lot of people were going to roll with Patricio in goal, so I followed suit. Also, West Ham Spurs, I hope there are a lot of goals in that game with Arnie and... I mean, Kate, I don't know how we feel about Kane now, 1 week after the whole debacle, if we feel like we might get buried a bit with our game week ranks, if he does anything against West Ham, but I don't know. I wouldn't mind.
No, last week we talked about, the last time out, we talked about effective ownership. We had Luke on, and I thought I was doing the sensible thing in getting Kane in and captaining him. And it just transpired that it wasn't really, because Hazard was so well owned and so well captained amongst the top 10,000, which is the area that you're looking to get into. I think it was something like 122% effective ownership. So it means just owning him is not good enough. It's a rank fall. And I'm feeling that with Aguero. He's got his ownership's well over 50%, so it's higher than Kane's, and he's going to be captained by pretty much the bulk of those people that own him. So in the top 10,000, that's going to be huge. So I just think with Kane, Kane might punish me, but it's not going to, the punishment that Kane can dish out is nowhere near the punishment that Sergio Aguero is capable, and he can really do that at home as well. But for now, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to listening to your next podcast as well, because I'm a bit of a fan. And
thanks, Joe.
Likewise.
Cheers. Big loving. But thanks a lot for joining us, Josh, Brandon, and David. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.